Hi, I'm Peter Haddock and welcome to another edition of the MachineMax podcast. And today I've come on site to the Bennie Group to meet a friend of mine called Matthew. Matthew, you happen to be the MD of the Bennie Group. And one of the things you've been doing over a number of years now is transforming the way the group works. And what's really interesting is your digital journey that I'm going to talk about with you today. So, a little bit about yourself, Matthew, and what made you come into this position, and why are you going through this race to digitalisation?
Hi Peter, so I'm Matthew, I'm the Group MD of the Bennie Group. We're a fourth generation family business. We've been trading for nearly 90 years now, and we're made up of 7 businesses. When I took over the business, we had 5, and over the last couple of years we've added 2, and that's part of our strategy to pivot the group from a kind of a contracting heavy and predominant business into a business that kind of spreads our risk over multiple areas. And one of the key things on that has been investing in plant and equipment from a sales, service and hire model. And of course technology has been a huge part of, and will continue to be a huge part of that journey as we scale up and ramp up the business to help serve our customers.
Now, one of the biggest things that I like to talk about with people is, how do they make a profit out of utilising their equipment? Now, I've learnt today you've even got D6XEs on the fleet. Yeah. They're rare at the moment.
They are.
But, there's investment in big equipment, and then looking around the facility here, you've even got a forklift truck business, which obviously is much smaller equipment, and you're now a dealer of not just 1, but 3 brands, including the Cat, Doosan, and another forklift brand that I've never heard of. And tell me a little bit about that diversification, but also about how you are managing all of that and how you're changing the way you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, my friends often ask me, how do you cope running 7 businesses? But I always say, we are one business, it's one Bennie, and we have our 7 kind of constituent trading brands, right? They're the businesses that serve the customers, and they do that because they're experts in what they do. So if we're talking about our equipment and plant businesses, so Bennie Equipment and Bennie Plant, we've got a range. We've got nearly 500 bits of kit, right? So we've got forklifts, bog standard forklift trucks, and then we've got, as you say, really specialist kind of Cat D6XEs. So kind of everything from kind of 20 grand up to 3 and a bit, 300,000, right? So you've got this huge scale. And of course, technology is a really good way to manage that. We know where our assets are when we can see them on a dashboard. I think one of the things we learn from the plant world is that the plant world is actually really switched on when it comes to telematics. You look at all the OEMs have their platforms that you use. But when it comes to the forklift and kind of the materials handling equipment world, they're not as advanced. And what we're doing is we're bringing what we're learning from the plant world into the equipment world, so that as a group we can have a holistic picture around what we're seeing where our machines are doing, so that we can support our existing hire fleets, but also really support on our brand strategy, as you talked about, with selling Cat BCP equipment, selling Doosan MHE equipment, now rebranding to Bobcat, which we're really excited about. I don't know if you've seen the new paint jobs. They look awesome.
They look great.
They look really
absolutely.
cool. And of course Turberg, which you mentioned, so the truck-mounted forklift, which is a kind of a challenger brand in the UK now. We're the UK importer for it, and we're really making waves because it's a really good quality product. It's another family business, of course, as well.
Now, the digital journey I've been actually following since I met you a few years ago during the COVID pandemic. And what was really exciting about that first initial conversation was the way in which you saw that as an opportunity to change. So, we were all struggling at that time, but construction and plant was getting out there and working. But there were different things that customer demands were needing. And that digitalisation process is not just about looking after the equipment as well. It's all about the end-to-end process nature of your business. Taking away paper, taking away all of the different spreadsheets, the different ways of working, the human error. Why has that been so important to you, and what are you seeing as the benefits as now you move into a much more experiential space with the MachineMax system, which you're putting on all your assets?
So I think for me, the way I organise and run and kind of have changed this business is it's all about building infrastructure first. So we often talk about a platform in this organisation, and that platform is the central thing that organises everybody together, so that my 7 businesses can go off and do what they need to do. And that applies completely with technology as well. So we know that we can make better business decisions using data. So our entire platform strategy, when it comes to IT, is predicated off making sure we have outputs that are data driven. So all of our systems need to give us data so that we can make decisions. And whether that be uptime, idle time, utilization, service reporting, costing, all of those different things help us provide KPIs and data for us to make more informed decisions.
But there's a change management, Matthew, that comes with that sort of thing. And I guess, what is really important is being sort of open and inclusive when you're doing things like this, because people are always worried about something new coming in and things like that. But that transition of these 5 to 7 businesses, all the technology that's gone in at the same time, how have you taken the company and the individuals through that journey, and how are they actually recognising that it's still actually a good thing, that it's probably taking away some of the mundane work they did and allowing them to have a better job experience in the whole holistic sense?
I think so. We're really key. When we talk to people, we talk about outputs. So you have to take them on the journey. There's always the change piece, and that comes down to communication and expert. But actually, when they physically see an output, if you provide better inputs, inputs lead to outputs. If you provide better inputs that are data-driven, then the outputs that we can wrap up through our data modelling. So we have a business analyst, we have a finance team, we've got an IT team. They all play together to help make that happen, and that's the platform being invested in and providing that infrastructure so that we can see those outputs. So once we sit in a meeting or once we send a report out and go, look at this, and people go, oh wow, oh I didn't, and then they start thinking, and they get on the journey and they go, well actually if I did X, Y, and Z, I would be able to see this. And they go, yeah, sure, we can produce that report for you or give you that information. And then we start to have much more informed conversations about the decisions we make day to day in the business when we meet either as a management team or at a more individual level in kind of the constituent teams.
So I guess what you're saying there is you're giving people the right data and you're giving the people the right information. So the higher desk gets the higher desk information. They get the team that are in your facilities here that are looking after the equipment are all getting that right health information coming off the machine, for example. So when you're able to deliver that, what happens to the sort of activities and the outcomes that you're doing? Are you being more preventative from the maintenance perspective? Are you being more reactive? How is it actually helping you when you've got information that's going to the people that own that space?
It depends on the asset class, right? So if we take our forklifts, for example, we can look back in our systems with some of our data that's both good and bad and clean and dirty, as we call it. And we can see that over the last couple of years, so if we take COVID, for example, as we all know, has created a resource problem around fitters and engineers. So we've struggled to maintain our own. We've always looked after customers first. The stuff that is out there with customers gets the premium service. But some of our own internal hire fleet, we just physically don't have the resource or the manpower to look after it. So actually in our forklift business, we had a growing fleet of trucks that weren't utilised, not because customers didn't want them, but because we didn't have the manpower to get them ready to go back out on hire if they had damage or needed servicing or needed to be ready. And that's where the data is really important, because if you looked purely at a utilisation report and said, these machines aren't being used, therefore we need to get rid of them because they're not being used. But actually you need to overlay multiple data sets, right? And you go, right, these machines aren't being used, but actually they're not in service. And actually if I overlay my CRM data, I can see that customers are asking for them. So therefore the decision we need to make as a business based on those 3 or 4 bits of data are, we need to go and get some more engineers and we need to push them at getting our forklift hire fleet ready to go out so that we can be servicing our customers and making better use of that asset to make sure the P&L remains strong.
Yeah, so what you're talking about there is we talked about the right data getting to the right people, but what you've done is you've transformed the business from silo type business into a business that everyone is aware of the different elements that make up that business. And that transition is also part of why you've got more businesses, isn't it? Explain why that works, because you had contracting over here and you had plant hire over here. It's not that case anymore, is it?
No, it's very much around building one Bennie, right? So we have our different brands that the customers tend to engage with, and we're working with data as well. We're working on a cross-pollination piece at the moment. If you shop in this business over here, do you also shop in this business over there? And if not, why don't you? Because you should, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of it's my retail background coming through. So John Lewis and Waitrose, we have the old adage of, well, if someone buys some if someone buys a wok from John Lewis, and they're probably going to go, they need to get a marketing advert for some, Singapore noodles and teriyaki steak or something. Throw it together. And we want to make sure we're doing some of the same, the same stuff here. But yeah, for us, it's about making sure that people are empowered with the right tools. So as we divide the businesses up, it creates its own problems, but also its own kind of solutions in that sense. And as we take people on the journey around using data, the decisions don't have to be made at a top level anymore, and actually people become empowered to use the platforms, or use the KPI dashboards, and use the systems like MachineMax to use what they're paid to do, and go, actually, I've got a good idea. This data's telling me that. I'm going to go off and do it. And actually, that then becomes their way of working. It becomes business as usual, which is absolutely what we want, because we know that if that starts to happen and we ingrain that culture, then the customers are the ones that benefit, which obviously is what we're all here to do.
Yeah, and I think coming on to the customers and the journey you've taken, what's really interesting is you've put all these systems in place to run the business. Mm-hmm. And now you're putting the MachineMax system in place to run the fleet, mm-hmm. and to understand what those assets are telling you. So you've done the people bit, you've got the people assets, you've got all of that technology, you've got them all trained up, and now people are almost looking at all these different dashboards and saying what's next. And now this is the start, and we're at the start, folks, and I will go through this journey with you, Matthew, mm-hmm. if I can. We're at the start of this process of putting in place the MachineMax system, and that's the next level of the technology journey, isn't it? Mm. So why is the MachineMax integration now so important to the business when you've laid those foundations and everybody understands the benefits of what you're already doing?
I think it's important to make sure that the business is ready. My experience, I've largely worked in IT, and I used to work for a software startup as well. And I think the key thing that I learned from my previous job roles is that if you try and do too much too quickly, you ultimately do not get engagement, and therefore change, specifically in the tech space, has to be a journey. And you can implement the best solution on day one, right? But you won't get adoption, which means therefore it is not the best solution. And what you have to do is take your staff, your customers, your teams, your system, everybody, your suppliers on that journey through. And there's lots of different facets that kind of that make that up, because ultimately that will lead to the kind of the better outcome for the business, for the customers, and so you go forward.
And so we look outside and we see everything from new machines, mm-hmm. to some quite old machines that you're actually keeping moving, mm-hmm. out there, some specialist units, and we're seeing everything from forklift trucks to big dozers and excavators and things like that. There's a real mixed fleet, mm-hmm. in this business. So the big thing that you've got to do with that journey with MachineMax is actually connect all of those different assets, from different manufacturers up. And I guess that's part and parcel of the journey of why somebody like MachineMax is going to be able to help you with that.
Absolutely. If we've got say 10 brands, right?
Yep.
Each of them have got their own website you've got to log into. You can't run a fleet of several hundred machines with kind of 10 different dashboards. It's not efficient. Your teams are going to get confused, and ultimately, as I keep saying, the customer will be the one that suffers, because we're human beings, right? And we make mistakes. And what we've been looking for over the last couple of years is what we call a single pane of glass to look at and see the entire fleet. And a key to that success and that change has been, I'm a big believer in failure. You've got to test and learn things. So we have, and again, that's a software that comes from my previous roles. It's a software thing. You test a piece of software, you learn from it, you test it, and that's how development works. And you can apply the same principle to business and tech integration. So what we've been looking at multiple vendors over the last couple of years, and one of we've made lots of we've got success criteria around what works for us, and of course one of them is being able to see everything in one piece. Yep. And that tends to mean that's where most of the OEM solutions fail, because can I put one OEM and have that as the single view on another one that's a completely different brand? It just seems a bit odd. Yep. Which is where kind of the independence, so we look at some of the independent brands that are operating that space like MachineMax come through really well. I think for me, one of the things that's been really key, and I talked about this earlier with change being successful, is the simplicity of the MachineMax platform. Right. It is a godsend. A lot of people using this platform need to, get up to speed quickly, get using it. And I think the thing about MachineMax is, and almost I shouldn't say this, but there's little to no training required, because it's kind of self-explanatory. It literally is self-explanatory. And I think that's part of the journey MachineMax is going on as well, as it develops its product base from kind of simple utilization products, it adds on new things. It's kind of really keeping core to its product portfolio around simplicity is key. because a lot of these people are busy people.
Yep.
They don't have time to click through 10 screens to get to the number they want. It's all about where are the key bits of information, the key bits of data that you need to run your business, and then harnessing that in the right way at the front of the screen across the entire fleet, not just one asset class or one brand, and giving the team the ability to serve the customer in the right way.
And I think one of the elements to that is also recognising that this is an industry where people just aren't sat at their desk every day. They're in a workshop over here. They're on the site just behind us doing some work. So those people have job roles, and if they can see what's going on, and if the site manager can see what's going on from your perspective, then that makes things really possible. So you're on the start of this journey now, and I talk to a lot of people about the low-hanging fruit, the quick wins, and the first thing that everybody seems to talk about with me for obvious reasons is idle time. So tell me a little bit about what you're hoping to achieve with that sort of idle time element there, with fuel costs so high and with clients of yours actually wanting carbon reports nowadays.
Well, yeah, I think obviously the whole carbon agenda is massive for every business in the UK, and it's not going away, right?
Yeah.
We've got to really focus on that over the next couple of years. And personally, I cannot wait for hydrogen, right? That is the future. But diesel costs have gone up massively. So the construction industry has suffered twofold. Red diesel disappeared, and we had Mr. Putin invading Ukraine, which obviously pushed the price of everything up. And so it's made people acutely aware that diesel is we've really got to be careful with it. So from our point of view, it's about making sure our customers have the ability to manage that. I think also it plays into kind of two other points. The construction industry, and I hate to say it, is one of the least efficient industries in the UK. Right, it sits behind farming, it sits behind fishing. It's a huge part of the UK economy. How can it be so far behind? And there's lots of companies out there like MachineMax pushing to help and provide the construction industry with the right tools to become more efficient. I was talking to someone the other day, and we come back to this idling and utilisation, and we talk about hydrogen or battery technology. And of course we say, well, a dozer can't have a battery in it because it's not going to be able to work for 8 hours a day. It's not going to have enough power. But actually look at the utilisation during that. Is it on for 8 hours doing 8 hours work?
Exactly.
No, it's not. If it's doing half that, and actually the battery could be sufficient. And that's the thing I think for us to start analysing. Don't just apply a new fuel and just assume that'll work. Actually, your battery technology might work. How you charge that battery and manage that battery on a construction site is a different set of questions. But it does mean there's the battery may or may not be applicable. And again, that's using data to make decisions. And I'm sure that's the people higher up the food chain in the big OEM organisations to work that out for us.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting there is I saw as we were walking around the yard, you've got the brand new Farrison electric telehandler. And that business has actually worked quite closely with MachineMax. I've reported on that about making sure that the data that you need, the API connection to the machine, is there and readily available. And was that in its sense, another reason why you'd purchase a piece of equipment like that, knowing that is ready to go and can be connected to?
I think, it's an IT conversation traditionally when you talk about, whenever you sit down in an IT meeting with a supplier or a new software platform or something, one of the first questions they get asked about, where's the data stored? How do you know? What's your support thing? It's also, what's your API? What does your connectivity look like into other systems? Because playing nicely with other systems is absolutely key. And I think that's what's really important from our OEMs. OEMs that are good at sharing data and playing with other systems. When you spend a lot of money on a machine, I expect an API to be available for free for a couple of, maybe not forever, but for a couple of years, right? And if we need to renew that, you can do that on a service contract with them, whatever. I think it's not good customer service if you're them, spend 100, 200 grand on a machine and someone then wants to send you a bill. That's not good customer service. That's not nice. That's not fair. It may only be 20 quid a month, but that's kind of not the point, right? So for us, it's a really key question. Are you a competent OEM? Do you understand the tech journey that we all need to go on as customers? And do you have a good API available that means it can play nice with systems like MachineMax so that you can pull that data through and use it to, because actually once that data comes into your world, into MachineMax, we're going to be harvesting that off into other sections of our software estate to make analytical decisions.
And this comes back to this sort of usage in idle time. We all know that it's the big issue. If you could take your idle time down by 1% to 2%, that that is a big number for you with this fleet of 500. But equally, that 1 or 2% when you're hiring out a unit and the customer's putting the fuel in actually can make you more competitive, can't it? So the idle data that comes in, you know, how are you going to look in the future? Because obviously you're just going through the process of adopting and putting it out to the fleet, the MachineMax system. How are you going to use that to support the operator community and also to actually support the customer's operator community as well?
Well, absolutely. So for me, there are two things there. So one is, as we become more of a kind of sales and hire business, our fuel utilization itself on the machines is less, it's less fuel burn. That's a cost that I'm incurring, right?
Yeah.
But my customers need that information because they want to manage their idle time and their fuel and look at that. And we need to have an easy, sensible, quick way to share that with them across, a plethora of skill sets. Is it someone in office? Is it a site manager? Is it the operator themselves that have got to work with that to make the right decisions on idle time? I think the other key thing that then comes into it is if machine sat idling, it's not always good for the machine. So I'll constantly sit with people in our organisation who'll tell me, no, it's bad to turn the machine on and off. I'm like, well, yeah, and a machine that's from 20 years ago, probably, but the technology and the engine technology has moved on so far that actually it's not a bad thing. Okay, yes, it might need to warm up in the morning, but actually when you don't need to leave it running half an hour when you pop off to do something. If you're kind of leaving it for more than a couple of minutes, you need to turn it off. It's both a safety thing, but also it's now a carbon thing for the planet, but also it's a cost thing. And so as a hiring company, my machines are going to last longer and be better looked after and need less service if they're not just left idling, because it's just not good for them, which is going to reduce our costs as well, which in theory is a benefit we can pass on to the customer. Yeah,
and with that, I think what happens is people, again, it's a change management thing, but you're a step away from that. And so, supporting your customers and understanding how they're working is a really important factor. So for example, say we've got a fleet of Bennie trucks going out and you've got a prime mover that's gone out as well to a customer, and you're seeing that the trucks have got a lot of idle time because they're basically stacking up.
Yeah.
We know that we've not got a right fleet match, perhaps, or we know we've got too many trucks because it's winter time, the roads are muddy, or in fact the opposite, summer, and people are moving around quicker, so we need another piece of equipment. That kind of information can actually be used, and I know it sounds crazy, to actually off-hire in some respects, but actually give the customer a better service. So all of these sort of visions of what you can do are there. And how are you going to sort of go through the process of almost sharing this information with your customers through the journey? Because that's an important another step once you've got everything connected, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think it's through working with the right partners that make that easy. I mean, I don't want to go off and have to build my own dashboards and web-based portals for my customers to do it. So with MachineMax at the moment, we're working with Bennie Group, start sharing some of that data. They've got some machines on hire from us. So they can see that information, start to make some of their own decisions. And that is that's literally our first example, right? And that's the start of our journey to how we develop that with other customer bases and provide them with the right data and the right access so that they can make informed decisions. And as you say, off-hire kit or suspend the hire of kit that's not being used. It's unfair to charge customers if they're not using it. As everybody's got to play to the right rules around the hire conditions with the model of the CPA and stuff. But at the same time, I don't want to be penalising my customers because I want to have these customers for many years. I don't want to upset them and overcharge them for something when they're not hiring it. And maybe in the future there's some off-hire notifications or things like that can be suggested or automated through the platform that help manage that stuff better. I mean, we know at the moment in the UK we've got a bit of a plant shortage at points. It goes through its waves, and if you can identify from your data and talk to a customer and say, look, you're not really using these machines properly, how about if you reorganise? That might release up some kit into my fleet for me to go off and hire it to another customer, so I can continue to grow my customer base and broaden my spread to support the construction industry more efficiently.
We've also talked about investment in kit, and 500 plus units out there. There's a balance, isn't there, where you look at kit and go, actually, that's probably got another year's life in it, or a couple of years' life in it, or let's buy this new piece of equipment. You're now going to have the data and the performance data in a real world application, things like fuel burn are going to be able to monitor that in a real world application. In the brochure it might say this, but when we're on a site in this application it might say that. And you're actually going to be able to see this data. So I guess as you look at buying equipment, so whether you move from a hybrid, get a hybrid fleet, or whether you go for electric or other things that you're doing, you're actually going to be able to look at it and go, that particular 20-ton excavator is actually a better performer than that one. And that can actually inform your purchasing decisions and therefore all the way go through that value cycle again, isn't it?
Absolutely. It'll help us select which brands we want to buy from based on what's the actual fuel burn rate, how what does it cost to run and service, and actually there's the whole carbon piece as well. Do we keep a machine and spend money on refurbishing it and bring it back up to a great standard as if it were factory new, and then what's the cost benefit analysis of that? And again, if we've got a shortage of plant generally in the world, as we still do from a supply chain perspective, do we continue to, as we've done, keep older bits of the fleet and bring them back up to standard? So instead of new kit arrives and we used to sell off the older kit, we're keeping the older kit in the fleet, and we're spending, as we saw in the workshop earlier, we're putting new tracks back on machines and keeping them for a lot longer than we typically would. Those 4 or 5 year cycles will probably become 6, 7, 8 years potentially, based on well, I suppose twofold, the supply chain issue, but also doing our bit for the planet, so just continuing to buy new all the time, because that was the business model from 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think when I look at that, it's informed. This is all about informed decisions.
Absolutely.
So we look at the information that's real, that's coming off your machines when they're being utilised all over the place. We look at the fact that we have got, and I'm coming on to this now, the people problem. So you've talked about non-available kit and all the rest of it. Well, actually, there's a people problem that we've got. We can't attract good people into this industry in the first place. We lose people out of the industry all of the time because of the way in which it works. And we need to bring through the next generation of operators in particular, and like you said, mechanics and workshop operatives. And we've got to be able to give them something that helps support them become a better operator or a better mechanic and more informed and actually make their role more enjoyable. What are the things you think technology is going to give you to make this industry a bit more appealing, and also to support those operators that might need some more help because they've got a new machine and or because they're moving on to the dozer that you've got, and that training and that mentorship, which is also important.
Well, it's been a core component of our business and has been for many years. And my mum, our chairman, is a big advocate of that. We've got to bring the next generation into the business. And we're a business that is construction focused. We need plant operators and fitters and engineers, but equally we need people to make shoes. We've got a shoe factory just down the road in Kettering in the group as well, and we have some of the same challenges there. So I was talking at Tresham College down the road the other day to a group of youngsters who were, I think, vaguely interested in what I had to say. Around, guys, these guys were doing an engineering degree. And I said, look, you're doing engineering, but what are you going to do with that degree? You need to think about that. And think about all the opportunities that are available. If you're interested in cars, then go down the car route. If you like construction and big bits of kit and you want to play with them, come and work for it. Not necessarily just us. I couldn't give all 40 of them a job, but go and find other companies in the local area that do that, because that is the future. And again, I think it's about what appeals to them. I think the notional idea of, it's a muddy, dirty environment and it's cold and wet in the winter is not appealing to an 18-year-old at all, right? But actually, if you start to overlay some of the technology stuff, so these, 18, 20-year-olds have got more technical experience than I've got, and I'm only kind of 10, 12, 13 years older than them. If you're giving them those fun bits of tools and that data, they're the bits that they can relate to and understand, and therefore go, actually, this is quite cool. I can get on board with this. This isn't too dissimilar to, the app on my iPhone or the PlayStation console in terms of how I'm doing these things. And actually, as the world evolves, as we move into autonomous equipment, absolutely, it'll be a really interesting space for them, because actually, do you sit like an American fighter pilot in a war room and control 3 or 4 bits of kit instead of just operating the one bit of kit? And of course, data will be the facilitator for all of that. We won't be able to sit in the construction war room and run kind of 4 or 5 bits of kit from one person. without all of that data and all of that connectivity and that single pane of glass to make it happen. Because you're going to have to get the bell dumper to talk to the cat excavator, to talk to the kind of JCB telehandler. All of those things are going to have to talk together autonomously to work together on site. And the youngsters are going to be key to that in the next probably 10 years or so, as that technology starts to come through. And I think you've seen it already. It's happening. It's there. It just needs that adoption.
Yeah, and the connectivity is there. That's capable. We talk about the connected worksite all the time and things like that. And so, Matthew, we've covered a lot of the journey right now. So, what are we seeing in the next couple of years from the business as you roll out the MachineMax platform now, as you integrate that within your own digitalization and own journey as such? What are we going to see from the group, and what are your ambitions for the future, and how are you going to move forward and get that data-led competitive advantage?
I think, from our perspective, it's going to be all about making sure that we're doing everything we can to serve our customers first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
But it's also going to be about providing them with the right data and connectivity to do that. As the construction industry evolves, which is going to do, because we're all on that journey now, there is going to be more requirements around carbon capture. So we've got to make sure we're ready for that. There's going to be more requirements around fuel efficiency. And we've got to be ready for that. And that is all going to be underpinned by data. And I think that is all, and that infrastructure and that platform and that methodology that we're building and understanding across our business and our staff base and our customer base is getting ready for that autonomous journey. In 10 years' time, we're going to be operating machines in very different ways. We're going to have a different fuel source, most definitely, right?
Yep.
We are going to have a kind of connected work site that has less operators on it, but maybe more fitters keeping the kit going. There's all of that stuff, but we've got to be front and centre and ready for it, right? I'm about building, I want to build our hire business across Bennie plant and Bennie equipment into kind of double the size that they are now. That is our plan over the next 4 years, and we're on that journey, and it's working and delivering. And for me, it's got to be underpinned by the data. If I've just got a bit of kit in that I hire out and I don't provide the technical overlay with the data to my customers, I'm not going to be able to compete against others that are. It's as simple as that, because the customer will need it.
And that's a lovely place for us to end the podcast, Matthew. Lots of exciting things going on here. I'm going to be able to follow your journey thanks to the next invite I've got to come and see you guys when we're on site, using all that information, and to hopefully talk to one of your customers and the benefits that they're getting. I actually know the Buckingham Group very well, so that's a great example that I'd like to follow through with you. But thanks again for talking to me about the journey. It continues at a pace, certainly exciting moments here for the Bennie Group and your team. Cheers.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.